Ninja Gaiden franchise has always been a challenging series of games, but when Ninja Gaiden 3: Razor's Edge came out in 2012, many experienced players decided it was a game that was better left out of the series. The combat experience is different from what they were used to from the previous titles, and although challenging, just like its predecessors, Razor's Edge proved too frustrating of an experience for many players, myself included, when it first launched. One of the main culprits, the Alchemists. Are you struggling against these guys? If you are, don't beat yourself up about it. The Alchemists are one of the most difficult enemies that you'll face in Razor's Edge. Many players reach the second chapter of the game, and when they first encounter these guys, they go from having a good time to, unfortunately, wanting to call it quits. Don't give up. Some players who manage to succeed and move forward decide that this game would be much more fun if they didn't have to face off against these guys ever again. And I've heard people claim that the Alchemists are one of the main reasons they either gave up on Razor's Edge or decided it just wasn't a fun time and put the game back on the shelf. Razor's Edge has an incredibly fun and challenging combat system, and along with this tutorial here, I'll be working on other guides in the future to help players, like myself, who've picked Razor's Edge back up and are giving it another go or playing the game for the very first time. With the upcoming release of Ninja Gaiden 4, Razor's Edge is definitely a great warm-up exercise to get ourselves back into the swing of things. So, with all that being said, let's get this guide started. So you've been making progress through the game, facing off against all kinds of angry men and attack dogs, maybe a few demons and even a spider tank. You've made it to the second day of the campaign and have hacked your way through a bunch more enemies. When you encounter what appears to be the second boss fight of the game so far, you've come across the infamous Alchemists, and you might be about to figure out that this isn't a boss fight, and these guys are just another type of enemy in the game. The first time you take these guys on, if you're like me, you struggled quite a bit. They have shields, they dodge your attacks, they shoot plasma at you, they teleport across the screen and grab you, draining your precious ninpo and life gauges. They're kind of annoying, right? Well, there are a number of ways you can take on these guys, and I'll cover a few different methods to approach taking them down with precision. There are two versions of the Alchemist enemy type. One version is introduced to you about a third of the way through day 2 of the campaign, and they come in dark gray or white cloaks. The white cloak versions are more difficult and take more damage to defeat than the dark gray ones. However, they perform all of the same types of attacks but are also slightly less aggressive. These Alchemists do not have weapons, but they attack with their fists and kicks. They can grab you and drain your health and ninpo. And when they have their shield charged up, they can shoot 2 different types of projectiles. A slow-moving projectile that tracks you and will follow you around the arena, and a charge blast which moves very fast and is typically well-timed to hit you just when you aren't ready for it. Once their shields are down, these enemies do not block Ryu's attacks, but after a few connecting blows, they will start to dodge away to avoid taking any more damage. This is important to remember because they will time their counterattacks to punish you the second you are unable to block or dodge. These types of Alchemists will be the primary focus for this guide. The second type of Alchemists are the ones modeled after the Regent of the Mask. They wear gray cloaks and carry sabers, just like our masked friend, whom we met as the first boss encounter at the end of the first day of the campaign. They have a very similar moveset to the Regent as well, except they can also unleash projectile attacks like the ones mentioned before. They do not have shields, and they also do not need to charge up their projectiles before launching them at Ryu. So you have to keep your eyes and ears on high alert to avoid taking damage. You will likely not encounter these enemies except for at the highest difficulty levels, and they show up in both Day 7 and Day 8 at Master Ninja difficulty and above. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. The first thing you want to do is slow down. Many of the enemies you face so far were what we would call fodder, and you can mash buttons and flail your weapons wildly to great effect. But the Alchemists are a bit different, so take a pause. These guys require careful attack button inputs, timely blocking, jumping, and dodging. They will punish careless inputs and unsafe combo strings to great effect. At the higher difficulty levels, enemies read your inputs and track your movement, so it may almost feel unfair at times. But that's a part of the challenge that you may grow to enjoy overcoming with more time piloting Ryu and Razor's Edge. the smoothest and quickest version of our favorite Hayabusa ninja to date. The next thing that you'll want to be aware of is the direction your camera is pointed. You want to keep these guys in your sights as much as possible, and if possible, try to keep all of them visible on the screen. It's never fun to get blindsided by a plasma ball or a grab attack from seemingly out of nowhere. This is a good idea versus other enemies as well, but here it's extra important. If you're not already pretty comfortable moving the camera around, here's a really good place to start practicing. Now you go to try and hit them, and your weapon bounces off, sending Ryu stumbling backwards. They have a shield, so before you can do any real damage to them, we need to break it. The heavy attack is your friend here, but you don't want to just throw heavy attacks without a game plan. Check your surroundings, give yourself some separation from the other enemies, and time your heavy attack carefully. Fortunately, breaking the Alchemist's shield also stuns them briefly, giving you a chance to start chipping away with a few light attack strings or charged heavy attack. This brings us to our first and simplest method of taking them out efficiently. As soon as you break their shield, the Alchemist is stunned for just long enough to hit them with a level 1 ultimate technique. Simply hold the heavy attack button immediately after breaking their shield until just before he re-engages with you to unleash the level 1 ultimate attack. Rinse and repeat. Unfortunately, there are usually more than one of these guys attacking you, so this is why spacing and awareness are key. Check to make sure one of the other alchemists isn't about to blast you from the side or grab you from another. Once you see an opening for a safe attack, smack them with a heavy attack to break their shield and charge up your ultimate technique. If you have to unleash the heavy attack before you fully charged, don't be afraid to reset and try again. This is by far the easiest method of defeating these enemies. And if that's all you're concerned about, then you're all set to go. But if you're interested in some of the more challenging methods of taking out the alchemists, stay tuned. For the next method of battling against the alchemists, we want to make good use of our projectile weaponry. The shuriken and bow are super effective against them. Like I mentioned earlier, once the alchemist's shield is broken, they do not block, so we can utilize our bow and shuriken to keep the alchemists from regenerating their shields and take on these guys the more traditional way of hacking and slashing until they're defeated. Just like before, you want to be careful about overextending your combo strings because they will punish mistakes and unsafe attacks. Don't forget to keep them in your sights and be ready to block or dodge as soon as they start gearing up for their counterattacks. At the start of day 3, we are given explosive arrows to use with our bow, and also by day 3, you've likely unlocked the ability to perform the classic flying swallow attack. You can hit a shielded alchemist with a flying swallow, which will simultaneously break their shield and send Ryu airborne, similar to when an enemy blocks a flying swallow attack. When this happens, immediately launch an explosive arrow towards the alchemist while still in the air. Most of the time, the arrow will auto-track towards your intended target, so no aiming is required. Once the arrow hits its target and explodes, the alchemist will be in a knockdown state, further exposing them to more attacks with your preferred weapon. Shuriken are also effective at interrupting the alchemists while attempting to recharge their shields. Just be careful not to throw so many that it leaves you defenseless when there are other enemies trying to attack you. This method, in my opinion, is much more rewarding to defeat them with than our first method of simply using charged heavy attacks and ultimate techniques over and over. It's certainly not as simple or as safe of a method, but I guarantee it is a lot more fun. I plan on creating a tutorial for explaining how to perform certain move cancels using the bow and shuriken. If you're already familiar with these techniques, you can launch many arrows into the enemy, thereby softening them up for a much higher chance of delimbing and obliterating them quickly. If you're not familiar with how to perform bow and shuriken cancels, keep an eye out on my channel for a guide in the near future. These techniques will completely change the way you play Razor's Edge and add an entire new layer of fun to the gameplay. Another method that I'd like to cover here is using the guillotine throw to deal massive damage to the alchemists. The guillotine throw is a move, like the wind path and flying swallow techniques, that must be unlocked in the skill tree. If you've unlocked these moves, and you're battling against enemies in an arena with walls that Ryu can utilize to perform attacks, The guillotine throw is a super fast and effective way to deal with humanoid enemies of all types, including the Alchemists. Successfully landing a guillotine throw will either kill or delimb an enemy if they are thrown into a wall. Not to mention the incredibly satisfying sound of hearing their helpless bodies smack against the hard surface. To perform a successful guillotine throw against the Alchemists, they must first have their shields removed. This is true for any armored enemy type. Before we can land a guillotine throw, their shields or armor must be removed. Fortunately, the Alchemist shields are very simple to remove, as we've shown already. Once their guard is down, you will want to perform a wind path jump by pressing the jump and light attack buttons simultaneously. As soon as Ryu is close to the enemy, you must input the jump and light attack buttons again simultaneously, which will allow Ryu to grab onto the head and shoulders of the target enemy, who will then be flung with extreme force in the direction of his initial jump. When you position Ryu so that the enemy is between him and a wall, it's time. One trick to note is that you will need to press the inputs more quickly than you may realize. If you find yourself missing the guillotine throw consistently, try to input the jump and light attack buttons almost as soon as you see Ryu leave the ground. He will automatically jump towards the nearest threat, so keep that in mind as well. The wind path technique isn't just a handy technique for evasion. Have fun with this one. For our third and final method of taking on the Alchemists, we'll discuss the ability for Ryu to launch them into the air and perform aerial attacks like the Izuna and underworld drops. This strategy requires precise input of the forward heavy attack once their shield has been broken. There is a very brief window of time once their shield has been broken where the Alchemist will be vulnerable to being air-launched. You will want to practice the forward heavy input until you're fairly comfortable pulling it off consistently. It is risky due to the fact that if you mess up the input, Ryu will be left open to counterattack while recovering from the whiffed heavy attack. A standard heavy attack is not cancelable, so you're stuck in the animation until he recovers, and this is when you will almost inevitably be grabbed and drained of your health or blasted by a plasma ball, sending Ryu to the shadow dimension while you're left contemplating your life's decisions. All jokes aside though, for real, this is the way. This is the method a true ninja will utilize to vanquish their foes. Here are a few things to keep in mind while learning the ropes with this method. I mentioned that a standard heavy attack is not cancelable, meaning that you cannot interrupt the recovery frames of the move by inputting a shuriken throw. This is what makes the timing window of this method so tricky. Once you break their shield with a heavy attack, you must wait until Ryu has fully recovered before you input your forward heavy attack. If you input the move too soon, Ryu will perform another standard heavy attack and be left wide open and defenseless. In other words, you cannot input buffer the attack or pre-input the move during recovery frames. If you input the move too late, Ryu will perform an air launch attack on the empty space where the Alchemist was standing just before he decided to yeet out of there. The timing window is tight, but once you've got it down, the combo potential is nearly endless. Lastly, all of the previously discussed information related to the other methods should be utilized to take out the enemy. Be aware of as many of the enemies on the screen as possible. Pay attention to what they're doing and be ready to react. Keep your eyes peeled for alchemists off to the side who may be charging a plasma ball to send your way or other foes ready to attack. Keep your ears open to listen for the characteristic sounds of an alchemist who's poised to come in for a grab attack the moment you come back to the ground. If you pull off the forward heavy attack but the move whiffs, the safest method of returning to the ground is to shoot off an arrow, which lands Ryu in the running state. Or you can throw your shuriken, which allows Ryu to utilize an on-landing attack, which are generally fairly safe and quick to recover. Try to avoid sending Ryu back to the ground with a light or heavy attack, as he will need to recover and be left vulnerable. You can break the Alchemist's shield with a flying swallow attack, but if you whiff, once again, Ryu will be left open. So try to only use this attack when you're confident it will either hit the enemy or land Ryu a safe distance from harm. The flying swallow attack becomes less safe to use when there are multiple enemies attacking you, so be sure to utilize Ryu's quick movement speed to give yourself plenty of space. You want to keep the Alchemists grouped relatively close together, but not too close. You also don't want them to get too spread out to where you can't see them. It's kind of a game of cat and mouse, but now, the only thing left is to put all this information to good use and get to practicing. Razor's Edge is a ton of fun. It's chock full of incredible potential, and I've learned over the past few months that one of my biggest video gaming regrets is not giving this game a fair shot when I first played it all those years ago. I'll end by thanking you for taking the time to watch my video guide, and to please leave a like if you found it helpful. If you have any questions or suggestions for other video guides on Razor's Edge, leave a comment below. I'm still new to this whole uploading content to YouTube thing, and I'm not super comfortable recording my own voice to post online, so I apologize for the AI voiceover, but it's not the worst, is it? Check out some of my Ultimate Ninja playthroughs if you're struggling with a certain boss or in other tough areas of the game. If you're as hyped about the latest Ninja Gaiden release this coming October as I am, I think it's a great idea to give Razor's Edge a try if you haven't already. The Master Collection is a great bargain with 3 full Ninja Gaiden classics ready to play. I have a hunch that a lot of the combat mechanics from Razor's Edge will be helpful to be familiar with. Just like how learning a lot of the fundamentals from the older games carried over to Razor's Edge. These games have gotten better with each iteration, and I'm really hoping the trend continues on to future titles. Have fun, and thanks again for tuning in.